Guys, it's Jacob from StringBuzz here, stringbuzzworld.org being the music journalism site, links are in the description down below. And we have a brand new installment into our Problems With series, and that's changing to a new sound and my problem with it. So I'm going to refer to the original article as I usually do for these videos, so I hope you enjoy. Before diving into the real beef of this article, however, I just want to thank all of those who have been supporting our Patreon recently, as well as watching each one of our videos, reading each one of our segments on the site, and following us actively on social media. Things are still growing and it's great to see progress constantly happening. March was a very difficult period actually due to how busy we were on the site, how busy I was in my personal life, the lack of music releases, the lack of big music releases that is, and the transformation of this video format with a new backdrop and just better production quality of things as well. So thank you for keeping involved and, as I've said, active throughout that period. And now we can actually dive into my problems with changing to a new sound. Now, just as a disclaimer, I actually like the idea of changing your style, sound, image, dependent on what your situation is as an artist, as a musician, as a group, anything like that. I think it's important for bands and musicians to mature and develop in their artistry. And I also think it's important for artists to really only play what they really want to play. What's the point in making music if you're not even enjoying making music? Usually the outcome is much worse anyway. Also, there are great examples of changing up your sound, and good recent examples, in fact. I mean, just look at the new Harry Styles track and compare that to some of the bog standard One Direction tracks. Then you have Metallica's latest album. They've been the whipping boys for the last 15 years, but the album showed that as soon as they changed their sound up to be a bit more, I don't want to say progressive because it's not progressive, but a bit more exploratory, a bit heavier back to their thrash metal roots and just changing things up from the last few years, it made a big difference. And then you have the new Avenged Sevenfold album with 8-minute, 9-minute long tracks, which again, I wouldn't say are progressive, but again, more exploratory, more adventurous as artists. There are all great examples of artists listening to criticism of their fans, exploring new inventive routes, and even breaking out with a brand new style which worked better than the last one. Now we've got that out of the way, however, the majority of the acts that supposedly changed to this whole new sound thing never really reached the heights that they once did, and for good reason. So let me explain some of this. Firstly, the whole idea of a new sound indicates that a group is going down a route or an avenue that you haven't yet heard before. The clarification between a new sound for the group and a brand new sound altogether is sometimes muddied, and over the last year or so has been muddied every single time, and I think that's where the problem initially occurs. A new sound for the group usually brings about consequences that can either lose fan support or gain fan support. It might not be new for, music in general, but it might be a different way of approaching things. So obviously you can turn off the diehards and you can bring in the casual listeners. A brand new sound altogether, however, is a ballsy move, but if it's exploratory or like nothing else that has been made before and is a brand new way of approaching music, then usually you don't lose fans because you're developing a new way of approaching music. People can appreciate and respect that regardless of the outcome. Back onto the new sound for a group idea though, I have yet to hear in the past year or so an instance of this even working. Usually when a band states this, they actually mean that they're just changing their sound to be a different genre or like something else. They don't mean a new sound altogether, as we've already mentioned. That's a completely different category. They don't mean experimentation. They don't really mean anything along those lines. They just mean something else. Take Linkin Park, for example, which I know is a bit of an easy one to, it's like a low-hanging fruit to really punch at. They are the modern-day whipping boys of this procedure, I feel. They are known for constantly stating that they want to change to a new sound every single album, and they've done that before in the past, but it's not a new sound, it's a new sound for the group. So throughout the years they started off heavy, then more rap orientated, rap sort of new metal orientated, then more pop rock orientated with the Transformers films, soundtracks and all that sort of stuff, then more electronic orientated about for 4 years ago, 5 years ago now, which I actually quite enjoyed, and now they're just like an EDM pop group group. Unfortunately, their first impressions, which we all know are the strongest impressions you can make to your fans, was a heavy metal, nu metal group. That means that the predominant percentage of their fan base are probably still metal fans despite all of this changing. When you change a sound so dramatically from metal to EDM, you can end up losing what made you likable in the first place, regardless of how well you do it. People might appreciate the move, but they might like you for a particular reason, and once you take that particular reason away, then they probably won't like you anymore. And I think Linkin Park are an instance of actually not executing this very well. Linkin Park, as I've already mentioned, are a great example of how not to go about this procedure. I don't mean in the commercial sense, of course, because they are set for life no matter what they produce at this point. They will be bringing in the sales, they'll be bringing in the money regardless. But I do mean in terms of heritage, legacy, and even reputation as a group. When they announced that they would be embarking on a new sound, that brings connotations of experimentation, adventure, and variation. However, they didn't develop a new sound at all. They chose the EDM pop trend, which is around at the moment, and jumped on that sound. It's a new sound for the group, admittedly, but an old one for the art. That meant that they came across as a nu metal group sounding like an EDM group, or trying to sound like an EDM group, which funnily enough, they actually are. And I, myself, like many other critics, if you didn't already know, kind of hated it really. Of course, they meant well, and if they are happy with their product, then I can't really argue if they're enjoying themselves. But stating something that bold as changing to a new sound and then just going down the EDM pop route can kind of be a little bit disappointing and irritating. Another problem with this whole new sound idea slash concept is that people can accidentally regress from doing this. Blink-182 are a great example of this. They brought in Matt Skiba, which on paper was a great idea. I actually loved the idea of bringing in Matt into Blink-182. I thought he would fit really well and take the group to the next level, which they've sort of been missing over the last 5-10 years or so. They haven't quite reached the heights they were once at. They had an informed Travis on the drums. They had an aged and mature, especially in the genre, Mark on bass to really stabilize things, and an experienced and diverse guitarist slash singer in Matt Skiba, who had been through the reins on many different projects. They also had a better production value, of course, and a clear aim of just bringing pop punk back into the mainstream and bringing Blink-182 back into the center stage of the rock world. This all hints at progression and maturing, as you can imagine, but the opposite really happened for me. They tried too hard to really fit in, using production values similar to 5 Seconds of Summer, which is obvious because they had the same producer, progressions that were tired and dull, and lyrics that they thought would appeal to a new generation rather than the one that they are already in, because that was a stupid choice in my opinion. They did all this whilst making Matt try to sing like Tom, which is another big problem for me. This is an example of indecision when it comes to the whole new sound concept. You want better production values, you want to remain gritty, you want a different vocal style, but you don't want to be that different. You want lyrics that appeal to a brand new generation whilst writing in the style of the last generation. When it comes to changing up your sound, you can't really have second thoughts on it, and sure, it would be foolish to go all in and just lose all likability you had in the first place, as I've already mentioned, but don't muddy the lines between what is new, what is you, and what is new to your group. The worst thing you can do, however, is after stating that you're going down a new route and changing your style to something brand new, is release something which sounds exactly the same as your last album, which may have flopped. People seem to do this after their last album flopped. Fans seem to get angrier at those who speak false promises directly to them. Unfortunately, the statement alone, the whole new word, is a massive hype term, and I mean, new is probably the most prolific and important word in the music industry right now. If anything's new, and once you declare as something as new, then people expect new, and that hypes people up. My favorite group, Alien Ant Farm, yes, I know that's a tattoo and everything like that. I know that's really embarrassing, especially as a music commentator, but you know, you got to do some things. Are the worst example of doing this, as it led to their newest album flopping, despite actually being fairly decent in some parts. They had the older nu metal sounds which bookended the album, the Always and Forever album, of course, sprinkling the new stuff into the middle and in some sparse areas. You'd actually have to be actively looking for something new to even and find out that they said that they were introducing something new into their music. I mean, subtlety sounds great when it comes to this topic, but reception-wise, it doesn't always work out. So after all this and, you know, multiple ranging examples, it's still a bit of a broad topic, really. So what is my real problem with changing to a new sound? And well, my biggest problem is that I just hate the phrase. It's so broad and meaningless and hints at so many things which fans can individually interpret that it can always hinder that final product, regardless of the final product's quality and whether it appeals to other individuals. It's a statement that causes expectations to immediately become anomalies. Instead of the hype for an album simply being that you are creating it for your fans and your fans want to hear this album, instead each fan wants something different from it. If it were my choice, I'd stick away from the phrase at all costs. And if I did think my sound was going to change a lot going into a new album or went along any of the lines which we've expressed here in this video, then I'd let it really surprise people and be surprising for themselves. Only that way you can get the truest reactions to what you've really created without any premeditated perspectives going into it, getting involved. So that's all my sort of views when it comes to my problems with changing to a new sound. I'd love to hear your comments in the comment section down below. If you like this video, then please leave a like, subscribe to see more, and I'll see you around next time. Bye bye.